Hey, this is James, the founder of Sweetfish Media. If you've listened to B2B Growth for a while, you probably have an idea of what we're passionate about. Loving people really well, a constant pursuit of learning, and inspiring people to own their careers. With all the craziness happening with this virus, we are incredibly fortunate to be in the business of podcasting. So many B2B brands are looking for alternatives to their in-person events that are being canceled, and our business is growing as a result. Please don't mishear me on this because I'm not saying this to brag. It is heartbreaking, the economic impact this is having on so many businesses. But being in the business of podcasting, the demand for what we do has increased. And because of that, we're looking to hire really talented people to help us serve that demand. So if you like what we're all about at Sweetfish and you're looking for a great career opportunity, hit us up. There's a link in the show notes where you can apply today. I'm really looking forward to meeting you.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. This is another Behind the Curtain episode. It's Kelsey Kors, and I'm here today with Logan Lyles, Director of Partnerships. How's it going today, Logan?
I am doing well, Kelsey. I am managing quarantine okay. Actually had a good time with the family this weekend. We watched a little Pixar movie. That was fun. And excited to chat with you. I had some experiences here recently that I definitely want to share with other salespeople out there and what they can learn from it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm so excited to dive right into it. So kind of what you were hinting at is two situations where you told potential customers that we may not be a good fit for them. So tell me what prompted this.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of this conversation is centered around just how I've always approached sales, I feel like, and also something I've really been trying to lean into since I read a really great sales book called The Transparency Sale by Todd Caponi. If anybody listening to this hasn't checked that out before, we've interviewed him on the B2B Sales Show. We can link to that in the show notes. But it's all about when you lead with almost radical transparency, you have better results. And we're going to talk in a little bit down the road in this episode about some of the things that I think you can take away from this. But the situations where there were two different prospects that I was talking to. One had come to me and said, "Hey, we have an existing podcast. We'd like to see if you guys could help and kind of take our production to the next level." The other was a new customer that was looking for our help with launching and producing their new show. And in both situations, there were certain things as I started to ask questions about what they were looking for, what they were hoping to get out of their podcast, where they were most needing help. Some of the areas that they were talking about and showing needs were not necessarily the areas that we are the strongest, where we deliver the most value. And we can kind of get into some specifics there. But as opposed to kind of shying away from those, I chose to dig in on those and say, hey, this is an area where we might not be a good fit. In both situations, both customers were looking for help with really kind of higher level, very polished, very high production value on the audio. Now, I think we produce great sounding podcasts. We have, over 60 in active production, and they're definitely, I think, better audio quality than just doing it yourself and recording on your iPhone and throwing on Anchor. But they're not, most of the podcasts that we produce are somewhere between that kind of DIY, very, very basic, and This American Life or Masters of Scale or something else with that very highly produced, hundreds of cuts through the episode narrative format. That's just not necessarily what we do. Where we kind of come in is somewhere in the middle. And so I noticed this disconnect of they were looking for something more on that far end of the spectrum. And that's not necessarily where our strengths lie. So as opposed to kind of talking about other things or spinning up the things that we do really well, I dug into that to see, well, is this important to you guys? Is this what you're looking for? And so that's, I think, what other salespeople can learn from. And we can talk a little bit more about, what happened and some of the effects of that, and how the conversations actually went from there.
Yeah, I also find it very interesting that there were two very different scenarios. One already had a podcast and was looking to enhance it, and one was a completely new client. So what happened in each of them?
Yeah. So in the conversation where the prospect had an existing podcast, we had the conversation and I said, well, are you guys looking for production help? Are you looking for like what we're really good at, right? Is taking a piece of audio and turning that into several graphics, short form video, long form video, written content for LinkedIn, written content for your blog, producing the podcast episode, getting as much juice for the squeeze, as they say, out of, your one piece of content and turning that into more. That's really where I think our strengths lie based on the team that we have of great producers like yourself and the way that we've structured and grown the team from video to producers to graphic designers and everything there. And what he said was, well, that's not necessarily what we need help with. What we need help with is taking that audio quality and making it more this narrative style and structuring the episodes and giving you some raw audio and having you kind of piece it together in this journalistic style. And I said, well, we don't necessarily have journalists on staff here. We have some folks who are growing in learning how to outline interviews, develop questions, host podcasts like yourself and like we're doing right now, right? But that's not necessarily our strength. So if that's really what you're looking for, I don't know if we're the right fit today. In a year from now, we might have that sort of offering, but today we don't. And he just stopped and said, man, I really appreciate that. It sounds like we should kind of time out and stop the conversation here. But what happened was we had 15 more minutes on the phone. We talked podcasting. He shared a tool that I ended up sharing with another customer, which actually loops into this whole story. And I felt like I gained a lot of trust with that potential customer. Now, if he moves on to another company or they have some different needs with their podcast or he talks to someone else, I've gained some trust there. And I also haven't kind of stretched our team and said, hey guys, guess what I committed to? I know we don't have process for this type of show, but this is the customer I could get in the door. And then the other situation was kind of the same thing. They were looking for more of that higher production value, that narrative style podcast. And I talked to them about what we see in the sustainability of that. And there's a reason that we kind of fit in the middle between that highly scripted narrative style podcast and just kind of do it yourself, low quality. That's because we see that there needs to be a balance between quality and quantity in your podcast in order to keep listeners engaged, in order to stay consistent and be able to have the bandwidth to keep your podcast going, even with our help. So we had a conversation about that. So the tool that first prospect mentioned that he was using to kind of outline his interviews, take the raw audio and kind of move stuff around and create this narrative format, I was able to recommend to this other potential customer and say, well, hey, what if you guys use this tool to kind of create the structure and then you kick that to us because we do have amazing audio engineers that can clean stuff up and provide clean transitions and smooth out the rough edges and all those sorts of things. And then turn that into a lot more, as I mentioned earlier, in some of our strengths. And he was like, that actually makes a lot of sense as opposed to us, paying double or needing to find someone else other than you guys, because you do a lot of the things that we do want. If we could take some of that in-house. And so now that deal has progressed. We're looking at bringing on that new customer and we're going into it eyes wide open where they don't have this assumption that, well, Sweetfish can do these things that maybe we can't do. I didn't just kind of skim over that and just talk about the great things and set them up for maybe a bad customer experience and the producer on our team for a bad experience as well. And so one eliminated a deal, but that was okay because there were good things that came out of it. And the other actually moved the deal along as opposed to waiting until the very end or until after they're onboarded to talk about kind of the sticky part where maybe we were trying to put a round peg in a square hole, or maybe the saying is typically flipped. Anyway, I think people get what I'm saying there. Then we were able to address that could have been kind of one of those sort of things that pop up after onboarding, whether you're a service-based business like us or a product-based business where your product doesn't necessarily fit this situation, but you're trying to make it work to get that deal.
It sounds like there's a lot of benefits in being in sales and truly knowing and understanding strengths and weaknesses of the team. So let's talk about some more benefits. What can we learn? What's it like being transparent in sales?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things I alluded to earlier is that you avoid bad deals. And avoiding deals and not getting them across the finish line seems a little bit counterintuitive to those of us who have been in sales for any length of time. But what it really does is if you avoid trying to shove that round peg into a square hole, then you're actually reducing your company's churn rate because those not ideal fit. And I'm not saying that every customer is just going to check every single box and be a raving fan and just perfect for your organization, but the ones where you're trying to stretch a little bit too much. By avoiding those, then you're going to reduce your churn rate, because even if you get those deals across the finish line and they come on board as customers, likelihood is they are not going to stay for that long. The other thing that it does is it accelerates your good deals. So in the second story that I shared there, it actually accelerated that deal. I gained trust by just speaking open and honestly about one of the concerns that they had, because I had given them, hey, here are some other shows you can listen to. Here are some customers to talk to. And I said, it seems like you guys might be looking for kind of this higher end audio production. And he's like, yeah. And I kind of noticed most of the shows that you guys produce don't kind of fit that mold. And so by talking about that openly, we were able to come to a solution that seems to work from a price point, from a bandwidth, from who's going to take on what. All of those things seem to work, as opposed to, the deal could have just stalled out because they could have just decided, hey, Sweetfish isn't a good fit for us because we're looking for this. They don't typically offer this. But if we had never talked about it, then I didn't have a chance to address that. So some deals will get out of your pipeline, some will accelerate. And it's also going to accelerate your better deals because you're not going to spend time on wasted deals that are never going to close or are going to close and not stay for long anyway. So it allows you to accelerate your deal velocity and help contribute to a lower churn rate for your organization. The other thing is when you lower your churn rate, you have happier customers, which lead to more referrals, but you also have happier team members. A lot of folks listening to the show are in SaaS businesses where you have customer support, customer experience, or customer success teams who are responsible for the happiness of the customer and delivering on the promise that sales and marketing made to them, right? And in our case, that's folks like you, Kelsey. That's folks that are on our producer team that, I've talked with customers about what they can expect during their launch process, how we're going to help produce their show, how we're going to create more content out of their podcast. And if I've kind of set bad expectations or kind of said, well, we can maybe stretch here, but I know that our team is not set up to support something that they want, whatever the case that may be, then not only is there going to be frustration on the customer side, but you're going to contribute to frustration internally at your organization for anyone involved on the post-sale side. So the other thing that you need to think about is, what are you contributing to your culture? We talk a lot about sales and marketing alignment, but sales and customer success, I think the more that you're aligned and on the same page with your partners on the post-sale side, the better off you're going to be. And then the other thing, the fourth one that I mentioned earlier in that first scenario, was credibility and gained referrals. If you are known for just offering the truth, for really being, we talk about a trusted advisor in sales. How do you gain trust? You show that you're willing to speak the truth when it's not in your best interest. And in that first scenario, by saying, hey, I don't think we're the right fit for you, then he was able to say, hey, look, Logan and Sweetfish are actually looking out for me. They're not just trying to sell me something. If they are the right fit, then obviously they're going to tell me why they are. And everybody that I talk to knows that, hey, it's my job to put our best foot forward and offer what we have at Sweetfish. But if they know that I'm doing that in a very honest and transparent way, then they're going to feel more comfortable in referring other business or coming back to me when they're at a different organization. And no matter who you sell to, people are moving around more these days than ever. And so that investment in the long-term trust and relationship with that potential customer is worth a whole lot more than that short-term deal that you could maybe get across the finish line. But it's tough to take that long-term picture when you've got your quota hanging over your head or you're only looking at the short term. You've got to have that long-term mindset. And I'm not saying ignore your monthly quota, your quarterly quota. We all know we have to do that as salespeople, but it comes with a balance. And I just got to give a shout out again to Todd Caponi. Check out his book, The Transparency Sale. If any of this is kind of resonating with you, it's a great book to go deeper on this topic.
Yeah. All of those anecdotes and stories and everything were so powerful. Just to kind of give a little bit of a recap of why you actually told two potential customers why we may not be a good fit. You told us kind of what prompted it, what happened, and what was the outcome in each of the situations. And then I think most importantly, what we can learn, the benefits of being transparent in sales. And something specifically you said that I really liked was there's power in saying that we may not be a good fit. And I think that just can resonate so well in the sales industry and just in a company in general. Like you said, having credibility and getting referrals and kind of the long game versus the short game. So thank you so much for telling us about those scenarios and those stories. So if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a regular listener of the show, you know that I'm most active on LinkedIn. It's very easy to find me. Logan Lyles. My last name is spelled Lyles. You can also connect with me on Instagram. I'm at I am Logan Lyles, either of those. Or feel free to shoot me an email, logan@sweetfishmedia.com. If you want to chat podcasting or sales, I'm always up for chatting with listeners. I really appreciate you hosting today, by the way, Kelsey. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show.
I hate it when podcasts incessantly ask their listeners for reviews, but I get why they do it, because reviews are enormously helpful when you're trying to grow a podcast audience. So here's what we decided to do. If you leave a review for B2B Growth in Apple Podcasts and email me a screenshot of the review to james@sweetfishmedia.com, I'll send you a signed copy of my new book, Content-Based Networking, How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. We get a review, you get a free book. We both win.